we're going to get this show on the road here, as you can see on my screen, in about 2 minutes. That gives everybody just a little bit more time to log on, get connected. It's always kind of a rush right at the last, or at the first 5 minutes for people to get on board here. So in 1:50, I will get this show on the road. So hang tight, wrap up emails and whatever else it is that you might be working on, and we'll move forward here in a moment. All right, thanks so much. All right, guys. There we go. Could you just feel the tension with that countdown? I can't seem to help myself with those things. They're awesome. All right. So hey, welcome. I appreciate everybody being here this afternoon, lunchtime, morning, wherever it is you are right now. Actually, we have a few people from overseas on the line as well. So I guess good afternoon, early evening to you guys. So thank you everybody for being here once again. My name is Cody Strait. I am the Director of Strategic Initiatives here at Access. Been here for right around 15 or so years. Worked in, with just hundreds of hospitals, helping them achieve their paperless goals. So I'm really excited to be here today to talk about a topic that has just been really red hot for us over the past couple of years. And specifically, one of the things that I'm going to be talking about today is taking patient e-signature beyond simply the registration process. Right? The registration process is where a lot of people, a lot of our customers have been using patient e-signature technologies, but there's been a huge push in the last half of 2016 where a flood of customers have said, that's great that we can do this in registration, but now we want to take it to the bedside. We want to do procedural consent forms on iPads, or we want to do, patient questionnaires, and we want to do all these other sorts of things. So I'm going to be talking about, obviously patient e-signature within the registration process, but beyond that. All right. So this also is a webinar geared towards McKesson users and customers. So most of you that are on here, I believe, are using McKesson for rev cycle or clinical areas, or perhaps you're using Horizon Patient Folder or medical records. Regardless, if you're here but you're not using McKesson, that's totally fine. We are not specific to McKesson. Actually, we're quite agnostic as far as HIS systems or rev cycle systems are concerned. We work a lot with Meditech and Cerner and Epic, and the list goes on and on and on. So this is a webinar, guys. So the intent of this webinar is to be informative, and of course I typically like the presentations to be, how do I say this, less of a lecture, and I like to have a lot more interactivity to my presentations and interaction with customers. But again, this is a webinar, and so we have a lot of people on the line, so to keep it clean and crisp and keep everything moving forward pretty quickly, everybody on the line here is muted, and that does not mean, however, that we don't want your questions. As we're moving forward with this webinar. If you have questions, there is in the GoToMeeting panel bar, there is a questions box. So you can type your questions in there, and I will address all of those questions at the end. So I want to try to get through all this in about 25, 30 minutes or so. So again, I'm going to be moving pretty quickly. So with no further ado, let's jump right into it. All right, so look, the main solution that we use here at Access to address patient e-signatures is something called Passport. But before we start diving specifically into e-signature, I want to talk about this. Passport is our approach to helping hospitals eliminate paper gaps. So that's really our mantra. If you were to approach me at a large convention and go up to our booth and say, hey, what do you guys do? I would say, we're in the business of eliminating paper gaps. And in that, I mean that as HIS systems, like McKESSON as an example, as they've grown to be more robust, you know, the general amounts of paper that you have strewn about your organization ideally are lessening, because the McKessons of the world are consuming those paper processes and you're now doing them electronically. However, even the most quote-unquote paperless hospitals, we still see have quite a bit amount of pieces of paper floating around for whatever reason, and we call these paper gaps. So where do we typically see paper gaps? Patient engagement. Anything that deals with the patient, consents, ABNs, HIPAA forms, questionnaires, procedural consents, the list goes on and on and on. That's not really done very well by the HIS systems out there. I don't care if you're an Epic site or Cerner or whatever, it doesn't matter. Typically there's a lot of paper involved with anything that interacts with the patients. Furthermore, government forms. Any type of a form that has to look and adhere to a certain form structure, we see those as paper. And then of course, hey, we're talking about healthcare here, and you know, as part of the organization, you have the back office, your HR department, materials and purchasing, risk management. There's a lot of paper that those guys deal with. Of course, that's a whole other story I'm not going to get into too much on this webinar. But again, our approach is we want to eliminate the paper throughout the entire enterprise. So the way we see the market, where both from a technology standpoint and also a hospital standpoint approach these problems, is we see them approaching it in a very much of what we call a Band-Aid approach, in that you have a process in registration that's paper. You have a process at the patient's bedside that's done on paper. Patient portal, I'll talk more about that in a second, but you know, the bottom line is I'd like to have some forms extended outside to the patient via the portal. And then of course, like I mentioned just a moment ago, the back office, there's paper over there. So there's an array of niche technologies or Band-Aid technologies, and they service very specific, or they provide very specific solutions. So what we see is, again, we see the various departments of these hospitals approaching their own individual issues and applying a technology Band-Aid to that issue. And that's great if you've solved your problem in registration, and that's great if you've solved your problem on the back office. But the problem is that oftentimes the technology used in reg can't translate or be applied to issues in other areas of the organization. Vice versa, for technologies applied to the back office can't be applied to the patient care process. And so what winds up happening is you have all this huge portfolio of technologies that IT has to manage, get trained up on, pay support on, and it's not a really great situation. So our approach, again, is that we want to be that one-stop solution where we can help an organization close all of their paper gaps. So I don't care if it's one process, multiple forms, if it's multiple departments, the Passport solution is intended to be able to service all of these issues and provide solutions to all of these issues. So it's interesting because the same process that can deal with patient consent and registration or procedural consents on an iPad at the bedside can also be used for vacation requests or expense reimbursements or purchase requests or something like that. So again, it's a technology that's multifaceted and it can spread across very, very much across the entire enterprise. So let's talk about patient e-signature. Let's talk about the clinical aspects of things, all right? So the patient's journey typically starts in the registration area, and we've been doing e-signature for patients for about 11 or 12 years now, and we started off in the registration area, and we started off actually using a variety of different tools and technologies in the registration area to capture e-signature, and I'm putting a few of those devices up here on the screen, okay? And why am I showing you this? Here's my point, is that we've all signed things electronically before, and we've all done this on a variety of different devices. Most of our own personal experiences, and I'm speaking for myself here as well, is signing off on something electronically as a result of a retail or commercial credit card purchase. And typically, whenever we use our credit card and they ask us to sign that machine is not good. They hand you a blunt object to sign a screen that's very hard to see through because it's so scratched up. Then you drag that object across the surface of that device, and it doesn't flow smoothly, and the signature doesn't look like your signature. It's all pixelated. We see a lot of that with those types of devices, for example, in the upper left-hand corner. And you know what? Hey, that's great. If that's what you want to use and that can get you by, that's totally fine. But the thing that you have to understand, and like I said, we've been doing this for a long time, so if you're evaluating an e-signature solution, it has tangible aspects to the technology that your patient is going to be interfacing with. So people often ask the question, can I use the same solution at my bank in my hospital? Can I use the same solution at my grocery store in my hospital? And you know, yeah, you probably can, but will it, number one, provide an appropriate patient experience, and number two, does it have the appropriate security aspects that you need for a healthcare environment? Because certainly a healthcare environment and the signatures that you're obtaining there are very different if you're buying a gallon of milk and a loaf of bread at your local grocery store. Okay, so we started out using the types of devices in the upper left-hand corner, and they achieved a paperless registration process. And that's, okay, great, mission accomplished. But the problem is, on that screen right there, you see it's got an X with a line next to it and a page. The problem is that we were asking our customers to tell their patients, okay, customer, would you please, or patient, would you please sign your consent form right here on the dotted line? And the patient would look down at the LCD pad, and they would see a blank line with an X next to it. And they would say, how is this my consent form? I can't see what this is actually connected to or attached to. I don't even know what I'm signing. And that was a problem, okay? So if you're going to interface with the patient or have them interface with a LCD pad, I would highly, highly recommend that you make sure that that technology has the ability to display form-relevant content on that LCD pad. Otherwise, you're just capturing a signature on a line with an X next to it, and that's not a great experience. The device on the right is one that a lot of our customers use. It's manufactured by a company called Wacom. Now, it's still an LCD device, and it's about 3.5 inches by 4.5, 5 inches wide, something like that as far as the screen is concerned. So you're not going to be actually putting the entire form on that screen, rather, and I'm talking about this device right here, but rather you do have quite a large area, and so you're actually able to put form-relevant content on that screen so that you can say, you know, I, Cody Strake, hereby agree to sign the consent, blah, 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 and you can sign off on that. And that's good, and these things are nice, and they're efficient, and they're very simple devices, okay? One of the things that you can also do with e-signature if you're talking about using these kind of devices or devices down here is take the opportunity, if you can, to have these devices not just be paperweights when they're not in use. If you can have marketing or branding content like you see on this little device right here, if you can have that scrolling across your screen, that's a fantastic situation. That was a customer idea one of our customers came up with a while back, and they said, hey, we're, you know, patients registering, I'd like to convey to them our message specific to my department to that patient. You know, if it's behavioral health, I want a behavioral health message. If it is an OB department, I want more of an OB type message. Or if it's a cancer center, I want a cancer center message. And that's awesome. You can have images scroll across these screens while the patient is waiting and being registered, and they come to life, of course, when you go to capture signature. Now down here, this is the new wave. This is what a lot of customers are asking for, is they want to be able to capture patient signatures on touchscreen type monitors and devices, as well as devices that have more mobility to them, like tablets, like the iPad or the Fire tablet, and those types of devices. And fantastic, we can do that as well. I'll talk more about these, and I'll get into the demonstration. So as far as a registration process is concerned, here's how our customers tackle this, okay? Your registration clerk would key all of the patient data into their McKesson system. They register the patient within McKesson, whether it's Star or Horizon or Series, whatever it is that's out there, okay? We have customers using all the different types of McKesson solutions. But once they complete that registration process within McKesson, all that data is sent to our form server, which is housed at your site on your network. It can be hosted somewhere else if you want, but regardless, that data is sent from McKesson to our form server. Once we receive that data, and by the way, that data for the techies out there, it's just a raw ASCII text file, it's just a print stream. But once we receive that data, we're going to automatically select the forms, and then we're going to stage them at the server level, all right? From here, it's a matter then of presenting those forms to that patient. So what a lot of our hospitals are moving towards is they're moving away from the smaller LCD devices, and they're moving towards larger touchscreen monitors that actually show the full form content of the form. So the patient could see the form on the touchscreen monitor, interact with it, scroll up, scroll down, use their finger, touch different aspects of the screen for check boxes and things like that, and then sign off on the form. And that's great, and it's awesome, and people really like that. And here's, however, another big trick is we have a lot of hospitals that say, I want to use iPads. I want to be able to present that iPad to that patient as if it is like an electronic clipboard. Okay, great. The question is, how is it I'm able to connect that iPad to that registration clerk's workstation? How do I do that? Therein lies the real issue. What we are able to provide, if you're using iPads, is once you complete that registration process within McKesson, is we can put a barcode right automatically onto that registration clerk's workstation. And what that barcode represents is basically it's an ID for this particular patient encounter for the registration process. So I grab the iPad, I select the Access e-signature app, so you can actually download our app from the App Store, and then I scan that barcode on the screen, and what it does is that indicates that, oh, this is for this particular patient encounter. I need to grab all of these appropriate forms off of the server. So then we grab automatically those forms off the server and bring them right onto that iPad where the patient can then view it, add in data, and electronically sign the documents. All right. Now at the end of this process, once whatever modality, whether it's an LCD pad, a touchscreen monitor, an iPad, whenever those signatures have been captured, what do we do with the electronically signed document? Well, you, of course, are going to want to get that into your appropriate scanning system. So again, being that this audience here is largely McKesson users, if you're using something like McKesson's Horizon patient folder, great. We'll send it electronically into HPF. If you're using something ancillary like Highland OnBase, or you're using Perceptive Content or some other, like Streamline Health, some other third-party scanning solution, wonderful. We can get that right into the patient's record without any printing or manual indexing. So that's how it's oftentimes used within the registration area. So how can this carry over, though, to the bedside? Again, is your e-signature technology that you're looking at, is it a one-trick pony? Can it only be used in registration, or can it be extended to other aspects and applications? So this goes back to that mantra where we were saying that Passport is your one-stop shop. It can be used all over the place. It's the same technology platform being used everywhere. So up at the bedside, I want to capture some signatures for our patients. Most often, we're dealing with things like questionnaires, or we're dealing with surgical or procedural consent forms. So how do you get to those forms? Well, there's a couple of ways. Number one is we provide a forms on demand solution, so you could electronically select your patient, electronically select the form that you desired, and then have that form available electronically with the patient data merged onto it, and then you can go about and completing it. Another thing that we're able to do, though, is, and this relates back to the example that I gave just a second ago in registration. We can queue and stage forms from an upstream process within McKesson. So if you're in McKesson and you're able to have that, from that McKesson screen, have data sent to our server that indicates to us, what forms are required, which, all that conditioning and the rules can happen at our server. Like if we see certain kinds of data, then we automatically select the forms. We can queue those forms up and stage them at the server as a result of a McKesson process. Also, these forms can be launched via a hyperlink from another system such as McKesson. And if you have also web services available so that that session data can be exposed to our system, we can leverage that session data such as who the user is, who the patient is, all of that information that's available to us, we can use that and bring that onto the form. Now, regardless of all of that, different methodologies of interacting with the patient and the tools that your clinicians and nurses and doctors have. One of which that we see quite a bit out there is the good old workstation on wheels. Okay, so one of the questions you have to ask whenever you're looking at e-signature technology is, am I dialed in or locked into a particular device? Is this exclusively going to work on workstations with wheels? Is this exclusive to iPads? Is this exclusive to Microsoft Surface Pros? Or is it somewhat device agnostic? Okay, so for us, we like to play in the device agnostic world. So you could go up to it with the workstations on wheels and interact with the patient, and you could have like an LCD pad or something like that attached to that device, and you can hand that to the patient. An example, we have a hospital down in Daytona Beach, Florida area. They actually have a little over 110 ED rooms. Kind of wrap your mind around that. Their emergency department is over 110 rooms, and they use a lot of workstations on wheels, and they're actually using the LCD devices and passing those back and forth to the patient to obtain signature. On that note, if you are going to be using workstations on wheels and you're going to be using an LCD pad, one of the things you really got to make sure of, and it's just a practical matter, is that that cord that attaches the whatever it is, micro USB or whatever, to the LCD device, if you're going to be handing that LCD device back and forth all day, those cords connections are likely to become just worn out, and you'll have the cable can just fall out over time. So you need to make sure that you're choosing a device that's quite robust and is able to put up with that sort of passing back and forth. The device that we get from Wacom, it actually has a little piece of plastic that attaches onto the device, and it ensures that the cable is not going to wiggle out or be damaged. So it's just little practical things like that that you have to take a look at. All right, anyways, the iPads. The thing about the iPads that are pretty darn cool, again, is we have that e-signature app that you can pull up, and I can scan the patient's barcoded wristband. And from there, if there were some forms that were queued on the server level for the patient, I can see those in our application. And so I can see that I have a dermatology form, a procedural consent form, an adult urgent care encounter, and I can then complete those forms for this particular patient, or I can supplementally add additional forms to the basically to the queue here, so that I can complete those manually. And then again, I can just hand this iPad to the patient, and they could complete the document electronically. So the only other thing that I'm going to go over just real quick, patient portal. Look, you can use the same technology to extend forms outside of your hospital. So rather than a patient having to come in and complete questionnaires, as an example, like a radiology questionnaire, MRI questionnaire, you can extend these forms to this patient either through email or through your existing patient portal, which is also a nice way to help get some more enrollment into your patient portal. And finally, like I talked about, the back office side of things, you can use this same thing for converting HR forms, materials forms into electronic forms, and also forms that have an automated workflow process for approvals. So I can go in further about that, but I'm not going to do that because that is not the focus. All right, so I'm going to jump into the application. Actually, before I do that, let me just back over here. Sorry. So here's an example of a consent form. All right, so this is one that's commonly used, this type of a form is commonly used in the registration area. And so I can have this automatically present to that registration clerk's workstation after the registration process, and then I can show this to the patient in a number of different ways, and then I can capture the patient's signature. And of course I've had this up for a little while waiting for the demo. So there we go. All right. So I'm actually using one of these Wacom LCD devices, and what you notice is it's not just a line with an X next to it. We have form relevant content. We also have date and timestamp right down there. So I'm able to see what it is that I'm actually signing if I'm using just a smaller LCD pad. And then I can sign my name. And again, it's a tangible piece of technology. This is something that your patients are going to be interacting with, so you need to make sure that it's going to be good. If it's not good, it's not going to give them that really good first impression. If it is good, then they do have a very good first impression, and that sort of sets their precedent for what their care is going to be like. Then my signature is applied to that electronic document, and from there, if I had any additional signatures that I needed to capture, I could do that, and then click Submit, and this goes right into the patient's chart within McKesson Horizon Patient Folder or an equivalent system. All right, so let's talk about procedural consent forms. So what I'm in right now is, our passport application. You can see I've got a procedural consent form on the screen. I'm going to zoom into that just a little bit. And also, if you'll notice, I'm actually in Internet Explorer for Windows 8. And I've got my procedural consent form. Now, what I typically see, and we've been doing this for quite some time, is the patient here. I'm sorry, I was looking, the patient information didn't come over because I had pre-selected this earlier, so we would actually launch it with all the patient data. But what we see with the procedural consent forms is you have all this boilerplate verbiage right here and down here and down here, but you see these blank spaces. Okay, so we'll see that hospitals will have 100, 200, 300, 500 procedural consents. And the reason they have hundreds of procedural consent forms is because, well, they do hundreds of procedures. And every procedure has its own inherent risks and descriptions and things of that nature. So what we're able to do is actually, rather than having to manage all of these different procedures and different procedural consent forms, we can manage the procedures at a database level. So on the form, I can choose from a drop-down list the procedure that I'm going to be using for this particular patient. And of course, this procedure list could be quite long, but it also could be limited and reduced based upon the physician whom is performing the procedure, because clearly a heart surgeon would have different types of procedures as opposed to a neurosurgeon and an orthopedist and so on and so forth. So this is only going to show the appropriate procedures for the particular physician. Now as I chose appendectomy, all the information relevant to appendectomy was automatically populated onto this document. And here, further on down, you can see I have some checkboxes. I do or do not consent for the use of blood products. And of course, you notice as I check one, the other is unchecked. And then down here, I can capture signatures from both the patient, the witness, and the physician. That's up to you as far as whether it is you want to witness. And there we go. Sign my name. There it is. Time and date stamped. Now the physician, if they're right there, fantastic. We can get their signature. But if he or she is not there, then we can actually route this to the physician and they can sign off on it on whatever device that they're carrying with them as far as a tablet is concerned. And my point is that they don't have to be at a specific e-signature workstation. They can get real-time notification wherever they are and they can then sign off on it. All right. The only other form that I'm going to show here, unless people want to stick around, is I'm going to show what's called a POLST form. And this is an end-of-life care form, provider order for life-sustaining treatment. A lot of you might know this form. Some of you might know this as MOLST, M-O-L-S-T, medical orders for life-sustaining treatments. It's a state-run form. Okay, so the reason I say that is that it has to look like a certain way. It's not something that you guys have any control over. And all of them pretty much follow the same general look and feel, okay? But section A, you can see I've got cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR. And the question is, attempt CPR or do not attempt CPR. And look, a very simple thing here is I check this box. Again, it unchecks the other one. I'm only able to check one of those boxes. And a big problem with these forms out there is that people, it's not just that they're on paper, but people fill them out incorrectly. So like section B, medical interventions, I've got comfort measures only, limited additional interventions, and full treatment. So I can check the box for full treatment. I can check the box for limited additional interventions, but because I've checked the box up here for attempt CPR, I cannot check the box for comfort measures only. It just simply won't allow me to do that. Now, if I check the box for do not attempt CPR, I can select comfort measures only. Conversely, I can't go back up here now and select attempt CPR. So look, guys, not only are we making the form electronic, not only are we capturing signatures for the physicians, for the patients, not only are we creating an electronic process from end to end, but we're also trying to eliminate the workflow errors that can come along with these types of processes. Just a simple, common human error is what we're trying to avoid there. All right. So actually, I said I wanted to just show those two forms. I am going to show one more form here, a radiology questionnaire. I showed it briefly in the view patients. I did show it briefly in the PowerPoint. Let's see. Yes, bear with me for 1 second. Let me just choose a patient. And I'll go to patient engagement, and you can see a list of forms here. I had a cancer staging form, a birth plan, a consent for blood products, consent for medical treatment, the pulsed H1N1 vaccine consent forms. By the way, the entire, just to give you kind of an, for those of you that are international, give you an extent of our worldwide engagement, the entire government of the United Arab Emirates uses this for all of their citizens for immunizations. All right, so MRI questionnaire. Let's grab that bad boy. Click process forms. And again, this is one of those things that you could fill out via an iPad at the hospital, or it could be done via the patient portal. So I'm going to type in, I had a labrum repair in my left shoulder. So I can type in data in addition to capture signatures. I can also annotate on this body, where I've got the metal in my body. So I've got some there, and I've got something there, and I got something going on right there. Click Save, and then I can go to the next page, and I can check off all the various boxes. Now, as I check this one box right here, it says any other type of implanted electronic device, you do notice that there's a nice little bubble tip that pops up there that says such as insulin pump, drug infusion device, bone growth stimulator. So, if you're sitting right next to somebody and filling this out in the hospital, that's great, and they can ask those kind of questions. Or the patient can ask those kind of questions like, hey, what do you mean by other implanted electronic device? But what we can also do is provide for bubble tips. So just as you hover over this, there's a little bit more explanation about what it is that is actually being, the patient's dealing with. So I could go on and on and on, and I could show a variety of different form examples. But I promise to keep this relatively brief, and so I think I'm pretty much at the limit as far as the time is concerned. So I see that there are a few other questions that have come in. So again, stick around, ask those questions, type those questions into the question toolbar of the GoToWebinar application, and I will go through all of those questions. All right, question number 1. Can I capture signatures on an iPad? Well, yes, that was a question that was asked early on, and I think it was before I talked about it. The answer is yes. On that note, there's another question here somewhere, but anyways, about us being agnostic to devices. I said it before, I'll say it again. It is something that we are pretty much agnostic to, all right? And the reason that we are agnostic is because, or how are we agnostic, is because, again, this is a browser-delivered technology. So you can see this just as simply a URL right here. So that's all you need is just a browser. So whether it's Chrome or Internet Explorer or Firefox or Safari, it does not make any difference. So you can use just about any type of device. right, here's another question. Can you talk to me about security? Uh, Excellent question. Yeah, these signatures, there's a lot of weight that gets carried along with them. So security, I've done hour-and-a-half long talks at conferences over security and e-signature. So if you look at this from a high-level perspective, and I'm just going to talk about U.S. law here, which EU law and UK law pretty much follow suit. But anything that can capture a signature electronically is, generally speaking, legal and admissible. The question is how secure is that? What sort of data is that? Now, a lot of the technologies out there, just more like the retail or commercial technologies, is they'll take an image of a signature and they will overlay that on top of an image of a document. And that's perfectly legal. I'm talking about US, UK, and EU law. That's perfectly legal, but it is not really that secure. What we do is we actually, when the signature is captured, there's a lot of metadata that's behind the scenes that we're capturing, time and date, as an example, workstation, session ID. All of that is being captured and stored into the document concurrently while we capture signature. Some devices, and this goes back into that one slide that I showed where just different e-signature devices have different capabilities. Companies like Wacom and some stuff from Topaz, they have the ability to capture what's called signature biometrics. All right, signature biometrics, that's well, we've all heard biometrics. Those are things that are particular to you, like your retinal scan, the palm scan for your blood vessels or your fingerprints, those sorts of things. Those are particular to you, and your signature is no different. It's actually what forensic handwriting specialists use if there is a question about forgery. Okay, so it's not, oh, does this signature look close enough? No, it's how did they write it? And it's speed, it's stroke, and it is pressure. Those are the three items that comprise signature biometrics. So some devices are able to capture signature biometrics, some are not, and really it's about sampling rate. The devices from Wacom, they're able to do that, and they're able to do that quite well. Our experience, the devices with Topaz, they don't do it quite as well, and part of this, again, this just gets back into really into the weeds of things, but for some of the electronic signature devices, for them to impart a field that is detectable by the LCD screen, you have to have batteries in the pen, okay? And these batteries are activated whenever you compress the tip of the pen onto the onto the screen. And that's fine, but what we learned really quick is that those batteries, well, they don't last forever. They go out. And inconveniently and inexplicably, and maybe this is Murphy's Law thing, they always go out at 3 a.m. or they always go out whenever you've got other things going on, and that's a problem. Like the Wacom devices, for example, those pens, those styluses, I think styluses is the plural term of stylus, I don't know. Those do not require a power themselves. They actually get power from the field of the LCD. It's some pretty cool stuff there. They actually have electromagnetic resistance behind it. It's this, again, it's a whole thing. I can geek out, and I'm starting to go down that rabbit hole. I'm just going to stop. Okay, here is another question. How easy is it to create the forms? Very good question. So with our solution, we provide the option if that you can acquire the design tool. All right, some customers don't want that. They just say, do it for us, and we can do it for you. For those of you that want the design tool and you want to be able to create all of your forms, well, the design tool, and look, again, this is one of those things that I always tell people to take it with a grain of salt, is that we have a good design tool. It is good. It is simple. If you can use Word with some degree of proficiency or Excel with some degree of proficiency, you can design forms in our system or our application. But look, it says access on my paycheck, so of course I'm going to tell you, oh, it's easy, right? And don't just take my word for it. We have other customers out there. For those of you that are interested and you're looking at e-signature and you get product demos, talk to that particular company's references. Talk to their clients. Ask them how they're doing things. Ask those kind of questions. How easy is it? I will say this, though, and this is kind of giving away one of our little trade secrets. Whenever we have customers put in orders for us to build forms, we actually have high school students that come in the afternoon, and they're the ones that design a lot of the forms for us. So, not that saying that high school students are, they're good and they're qualified and everything, that's fine, but it's not the most difficult of applications. Okay, another question here. Do you have a McKesson Paragon hospital using your product? Yep, we've got about every flavor of McKesson that I know that's out there. Again, that's Series, that's Star, that's Paragon, that's Horizon. I don't know if there's been any other iterations. I've been doing this for such a long time, and I've seen these different systems come and go, so if I've missed one, let me know, but that's pretty much all of them as far as what I'm aware of. Okay, this is a really good question, William. I appreciate you asking this. Question is, can you prevent someone from moving to the next section of a form or to another form without signing the form? I'm going to go back over here and go back into this pulsed form. So just like earlier, I had, I've checked these different boxes, but I said, hey, look, I can't check this box here. You can do the same thing with signatures. So for example, Section C is not filled out right here, okay? Section D is not completed. So you could have those set up as required fields. So I know I'm not answering your question directly, I'm dancing around it, but I'm going to give you two different answers to that just general theme. So if I have not obtained or captured or clicked on all of the appropriate data fields, all of the required data fields, and I go and try to sign off on something, then it will not allow me to sign off on it. It'll prompt me to say, hey, Cody, you forgot to enter information into Section C. Please complete that. And if I then try to sign off on it, it'll say, wait a second, you need to sign off on Section D. I'm sorry, or fill out Section D. So you can make sure that all of the appropriate required fields are completed before the document is signed off on. And again, that just goes under the umbrella of trying to resolve simple, basic human errors, because it's one thing to make the process electronic. It's another thing to capture signatures. But if you can't eliminate human error, then that still is a problem. And so, can we fully eliminate human error? Well, no, nobody can ever fully eliminate that, but we sure can prevent against it pretty well. So to answer your question more specifically too about can we prevent them from moving on to another form without signing, well, the answer is yes. Yes, we certainly can do that. So and we can prevent them from trying to submit it over to your ultimate storage location. Also, one of the things that does prompt me to talk about this, we can save documents in the middle of somebody filling them out. So if somebody is filling a form out, say like an ED, and they start having chest pains, it's really not good practice to say, oh, wait, hurry up and sign these other 3 forms. That's not really a good practice. So what you can do is you can save these and save them to the server, and they might be using, let's say that they're in the registration area and they're dealing with a touchscreen monitor up there or down there. Then later on they're up on the floors, and what you can do is you can go, again, like for example with an iPad, you can scan their wristband and it'll show all of the forms that that patient has in process and the ones that they need to complete. And so from there, you can just pick those up, and it will basically pick up right where that patient left off. And again, if we're talking about like an iPad here, the only reason I say that is because they're using a totally different device from whatever they were using down the registration process. So I hope that was helpful. Okay, I'm looking at the questions here. I don't see any more questions coming in. I will, however, stick around and answer some more questions if you guys would like that. I'll give it just a little bit longer here, but for those of you that have attended, again, hey, thanks a lot for coming. I really appreciate that. Here is my information, and as you can see, I've got a variety of numbers there. So got a little excuse not to be able to call me if you're in the States or in Europe or otherwise. I'm pretty darn available. So if I can be of any assistance, please don't hesitate. Let me know. Also, if you guys are looking for an e-signature solution, we'd love to chat with you. We also really like doing on-site demonstrations when it comes to patient e-signature, and the reason I say that is because, again, e-signature has a tangible component to the technology, and it is more of our sentiment that if this is something that you're going to put in front of your patients, you guys should probably put your hands on it, sign off on a few things, and actually feel what that experience is like, because, man, what would really stink is if you were to get a solution and it's just garbage and you're like, man, I wish I would have tested that out. So again, we have a lot more comfort whenever our customers test out the solutions firsthand, and because they really become believers at that point in time, because it is a very nice process. Okay, I don't see any more questions coming through. So this webinar has been recorded. We will be distributing that to you guys afterwards, as well as we're working on an e-signature buying guide. If you guys are interested in that, I'd love to hear from you. We're also working on ROI calculators, or we have ROI calculators. If you guys are interested in those to see what kind of impact e-signature would have in your like your registration process in Bedside, we're happy to do that. I'll give you an example. One of our customers, as we just wrap up, this actually is St. Joseph Candler Health System out in Savannah, Georgia. Through introducing patient e-signature for both the registration area and the bedside, we were able to eliminate 34% of the total paper volume of the hospital, just with a couple of forms in reg and a couple of forms at bedside. The big heavy hitters, you know, your consent for treatment, your BN MSPs at the reg, and the procedural consent forms, 34%. So that's a lot. That actually equated to about 1 million pieces of paper a year that these people weren't having to put hands on. So if you want to do that same sort of analysis, we have the tools to do it. We're happy to share those with you. Let us know. Again, thank you guys all so very much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.